Tata Kalyani, Brother Bashir Versi, my sisters and brothers. Though I wasn't very much prepared for this address, but anyway, I've got nothing much to say, but just to welcome you wholeheartedly. And I really feel gratified for you to have given me this respect. So I assure you on behalf of the Travelers Inn Hotel, the management and the staff, we feel greatly honored and greatly respected by this occasion for you to give us an opportunity to become your host. So I welcome you all, and I wish our endeavor to go on nice, successfully, and inshallah, maybe next time we might make the same place another venue, the second time. So you are most welcome, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Used to talk across the room, and it's controversial or heated. Let's do it a little more better than they do it in the House of Commons in Ottawa. Keep it down, refrain from getting personal, and I'm sure we'll make something very useful to come out of this. Why don't we start by allowing Nazir Ghulam Hussain to tell us something beyond what we read in his paper. Where is he coming from? What his thoughts were in putting it together? A little insight to what the paper says, perhaps. Is it?
Mr. Chairman, the organizer, Mr. Chacha Kalyani, Mr. Bashir Versi, the hosts, the invitees, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. When Chacha Kalyani first approached me to write this paper, I wasn't quite sure as to the format the seminar was going to take, the shape this seminar was going to take. So what I did was I wrote a memorandum or a message to him, and as you can see from what I have said is that I made it possible for him to circulate it to the invitees if he so desired. It was only after that I found out that there was going to be a discussion that was going to take place, and there was going to be a presentation that had to be made. In any event, as the chairman has pointed out, he would like to know from the speakers, which happens for myself to start with, as to what thought went into my writing this paper. For a number of years now, I have believed very strongly that our Jamat has been involved in too many petty things, and that we have to go forward, we have to look ahead, instead of getting bogged down in trivial matters. And therefore I felt that instead of bringing to light certain things that are going on in the community, which are not, which should be overlooked, I thought that I would approach the subject more from a constructive side, and try and put across my belief, and a strong belief in that, that we have to progress, because if we do not do that, I think the community is going to drift backwards, and what we will leave our children with is nothing but destruction, or a stagnant, or a community that is in a stagnant stage. I think I would be doing injustice to the paper that I have written if I did not go through it with yourself, because unfortunately the papers were not distributed, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, but the papers were not distributed in time, and some of the people over here may not have had the opportunity of going through it. So what I will do is that I will go through paragraph by paragraph by paragraph. There are certain other thoughts that have come into my mind subsequent to my writing this paper, and I will add them on at certain stage. The subject on which I was asked to write by Chacha Paryani is a vast subject. It's also a controversial subject, and as I have discussed in the first paragraph, if you had two individuals who wanted to figure out what the meaning of politics was, when they could probably spend one full day and still at the end of that day probably come to blows and not agree on what it meant. So the next thing I did was I said, well, let's try and understand what politics is. And to do that, I went to the library and pulled out 4 different dictionaries to find out what was the actual meaning of the word politics. The first meaning that I found, and these are broad meanings, is that politics is a science or art or practice or profession of conducting political affairs or affairs of the society. And a society is described as a group of people pursuing a common objective of initially survival and secondly betterment. Then I picked up another dictionary to see if I could find another meaning of the word politics, which was different from what I found in the first dictionary. And lo and behold, yes, I did. The second meaning which I came across is the use of strategy or intrigue in obtaining position of control based on power. I felt here that we were getting into the meat of things. I felt that we were getting into areas where we, as individuals, as laymen, understood what politics was all about. I was reading a book some time ago, written by Malcolm Manley, who was the Prime Minister of Jamaica. And he said it very simply. He said, all organized societies depend on a power system. And politics is a business of power, its acquisition, and its use. It's very cleverly put. It's very realistic. It sets the trend for things that are happening around us today. And basically, I came to a quick opinion here that politics itself is something that is part and parcel of our life. We cannot be aloof of it. We cannot stay away from it. It's something that we come across in our everyday life. If we are not part of it, we are subjected to it. There are people that are governing our lives in some shape or form, and these are the people that are running the society. So we come to, if we accept the fact that politics is something that is part of our life, then we also have to accept the fact that politics is not necessarily bad. But yes, you do come across people who practice it that may turn it around and make it bad for us. We then look at what kind of politicians we do have. Now, politicians in the context of, it may appear that I'm talking about politicians in the context of governing bodies in different countries around the world, but when you reduce it to a level in a community or in a society, it still holds true. There are 3 types of people. Majority of people seek power, and power, I correlate power to politics. So whenever I say power, I would like you to think that I'm talking about politics at the same time. Majority of people see power as something that is to be acquired for its own sake. It doesn't really mean anything to them. It's something that I have. I'm a powerful person. and it makes them feel good. There are some who see power as a means of making minor adjustments in the society, who do not wish to see an upheaval in the society. They want to let things run by themselves, make certain minor adjustments to better the society as such, but do not wish to get involved in something that will bring about a drastic change in the way the community is being run. And there are those that seek fundamental change. There is people who wish to see things totally different, who wish to see substantial changes being brought about quickly, sometimes on an overnight basis, and this is not always possible. The first kind that see power as something to acquire for its own sake. These kinds of people are primarily on an ego trip. They do it for their own, to satisfy their own personal ego. And it is from this group of people that we see, or we have found, that history has given us the greatest tyrants. This may be something that a lot of people may disagree with me, but I consider Hitler to be one of them in this particular group. The second kind of people who seek power are people that stay in power the longest, because they are the ones that do not wish to see a major upheaval in the society. They are contented to let things run the way they are running. They will make minor adjustments, but will not do something that is going to upset the existing system. And the third type of people is what I call the idealists, who, if they ever find themselves to be in power, are going to see themselves out of power as quickly as they come to power, simply because society, generally speaking, is resistant to change. Society doesn't wish to see changes. It accepts it, but it accepts it at a very slow pace. The problem that we do see with power, however, is that once a person is in power, he or she may seek more power, because human want is basically unlimited, but the means of satisfying that want are definitely limited. So what you're going to find is that a person that has a little bit of something will always seek to get more and more of it. Come a stage where that is not controlled, that you may have an authoritarian society. However, there have to be checks and balances in the society, because the greater the gap between the want and the means of satisfying that want, the greater the imbalance, and the imbalance always leads to some kind of an upheaval in the society. I now want to turn to what sort of politics the Jamat should be involved in. I feel that I can illustrate this best in a point form. First of all, I think that the Jamat should encourage free speech. I think that the seminar that we're holding today, where we bring about people that will come out, write a paper, come and stand in front of a group of individuals and speak their heart out or make their views known, is something that is to be commended. And we have to use these as a training ground to breed our leaders. The three categories of people that I from where the power seekers, the three categories of power seekers that are referred to. I am of the opinion, it is my opinion, that the leadership should come from the middle category, which is the category that seeks minor adjustments in the society, does not want to bring about major upheavals. However, I think that the leadership should come from that group, but that group should always also be sympathetic to the views of the third group, which is people seeking fundamental change in society, which can only be brought over a period of time. Leadership should be diplomatic, as confrontation more often than not is the cause of disruption. We have known that, we have seen that in our community. Confrontation is something that we have to steer clear from, because it's not something that is, our community basically thrives on confrontation. It's apparent, we've seen it over a number of years, ever since I came to Canada, I've seen that. There should be a bureaucracy in the Jamat, in the community. I feel that it's important, granted it has its own problems, but it does provide checks and balances in the system, provided it is run properly. Jamat should train leaders fully conversant with the realities of the world today, people that are able to see through tactics adopted by adversaries. That is very important, but are able to counter it effectively and morally. I think when we're talking about the community, we have to talk about politics, but politics which have a base that is governed by morality, not politics that has a base that is governed by ego. Jamat should encourage its leaders, once trained, to enter the outside political arena. There was some ambiguity in the subject when it was given to me, as if I was not clear whether it was talking about politics in the Jamat or to talk about Jamat in a singular sense, to see how we could train our people to go into the outside world. But we have to train our people with Islamic traditions and values so that when they go out in the society, they're able to project which community they're coming from. And at this stage, I felt that there was something more I wanted to add to what I've already said. We have basically, when you think of a society, when you think of a community, a Jamaat, a government, a group, an organization, call it what you want, you would think that organization wants to better itself in some shape or form. How do you bring about change? I call that, I refer to in my paper, I haven't referred to in this paper, but I call it politics of change. How do you bring about change? The easiest way to bring about change is to reduce a group of people or bring it to a common stage or a common platform where everybody is equal. Now this is not possible because equality does not exist. It exists in the minds of people, but equality really does not exist in everyday life. So how do you rectify that? You rectify that by bringing about understanding, bringing about a feeling of compromise, a feeling of cooperation among the community. Try and reduce the differences, be it social, economic, try and eliminate them by bringing it to a common platform and bring about change, because that is you can never bring about change when there is unevenness in the basic foundation. We might wish to distance ourselves from that, but as Chacha has pointed out quite rightfully, power and economics interact. It's not really significant to determine which comes first. But if you're economically well off, you can command at some stage in the future for power to come your way. And if you're powerful, you can command economic wealth or economic well-being to come your way as well. You have, once an individual is basically well off, he wants to pass it on to his children and to his children. So there is going to be class. There is class. I mean, I despise the word class myself, but it's a reality of life. One cannot turn a blind eye to it. So, how do you bring about this politics of change? How do you exercise it? A politics of change will fail. They have to fail in a community, or in an organization, or in the government at large, if it is not supported by popular will. It has to be will of people. Popular will is will of people. And popular will, in my opinion, can only be mobilized by understanding. The leadership has to understand the mass has to understand the leadership. There has to be constant dialogue, there has to be communication, and there has to be a step forward, but a collective step forward as opposed to creating a society where there is remoteness. A society where there is remoteness between a governing body and the mass can only lead in one direction, and that is backwards. What we have to do in doing this is that we have to develop a sense of pride in the minds of people in the community, make them feel a part of the decision-making process, make them feel important. You may call it that's sending somebody on an ego trip, but not necessarily so. If you walk into an immigration department, the girl at the reception, her only chance of feeling most important is for her when she tells you that, sorry, you cannot see anybody, or we can't do this, till you ask for to see the supervisor. You may think that it is, that's her only chance of feeling important in life. But if that gives us satisfaction, one has to realize that a person, it's difficult to take away from a person what they have. Primarily, the way I see it is that the social objectives of an organization are derived from philosophical thinking. And the philosophical thinking, there can be no compromise in that, because the objectives are determined on the basis of the thinking. So if there can be no compromise on the philosophical thinking, the only area to bring about a change through popular will of the mass is by adoption of a technique, or adoption of politics, if you want to call it. Now, politics, please try and remember the meaning of the word politics that I've previously given, is to adopt politics which are acceptable to the mass as such, or adopt techniques, if you don't want to use the word politics, that are acceptable to the mass. What I have just described, I've talked about politics of change. Now, what I'm just describing is the politics of participation. What is politics of participation? Politics of participation is where you use the basis of your actions through use of communication and dialogue as its tool. Politics of participation uses dialogue and communication as its tools, involvements as its method, and mobilization as its purpose. There has to be participation, there has to be dialogue, continuous dialogue between the mass that is being governed and the leadership that is governing. I then went on, this is something that I created myself as to politics. I mean, I put a quality, I put a description to each letter in the word politics. And I came up with this. The first letter in politics is a P. What does a P stand for? P stands for people. That is all of us here, that when you combine it, all form an organization, a society, a Jamat, a community, a country, whatever you want to call it. And the next letter in the word politics, when you spell it, it's O. O is organization, which we refer to as the Jamat here. The third thing is, of course, if you have an organization, the organization has to be run. So what do you have? You have a leadership. You have people that are running the organization. That is also a known thing. We have the leadership. Then we get into the qualities of leadership. The first quality of the leadership, and I'm not talking about individuals, I'm talking collective leadership here, is intelligence. And intelligence, I don't mean by intelligence that some people are stupid and idiots, and some people are, I mean intelligence, that they should have a certain level of intellectual power. The next word you go on, the next letter is T, which is tact. Leadership should show tact. It's an important quality. There should be tact. I mean, one of the main reasons that we have found in our history for confrontations is a lack of tact not necessarily from the leadership, but also from the community. The next letter is I. What does an I stand for? I say that leadership should not be idealistic. They have to realize that we don't live in an idealistic society, and there are things that are wrong. We have to accept them, but we cannot bring about a change overnight. The next letter is C. Leadership should show compassion, should show understanding for the mass. And the last is S, which I call sense, but what I really mean with it is common sense. Initially, when Chacha gave me the topic, he did not ask me about saying, what politics the Jamat should not be involved in. Maybe that was a misunderstanding on my part. But I covered it through one paragraph. And I have to read it simply because I don't want this seminar to be construed as something that is destructive. I could very well have written this paper by saying, oh, the Jamat is doing this thing, and this is not what we do. It was never my intention to write something on the basis of an Alim that is reciting matlis from a member. He says, oh, you're doing this thing that's wrong, and you're doing this thing that's wrong, and we're just sitting down, we say, ha ha ha, whoa, both sides matlis period. It's getting a slap on the face, and we say, oh, very nice, very good. So I do not wish to see that. But I have said that I said that I cannot complete my paper without mentioning that any politics that is underhand, that does not have a moral foundation to it, cannot be justified to one's own conscience. Your conscience is always going to be an answer to whatever questions as to whether the thing is right or wrong. Does not enable one to display courage of one's own convictions. If I were to make a statement, I should have the courage to stand up and say, yes, I made this statement, and this is the basis on which I made it. But if it does not allow me to stand up and make that, or to stand behind it, this is something that has to be distanced. Use its tactics to achieve one's goals by climbing on somebody else's back. These are realities of life. This do not only happen in the community, they happen in a working environment as well. These are the sort of things that the Jamat should distance itself from. Not only distance itself from, but it should make an effort to correct the ways of the people that are practicing. Not necessarily by brandishing them or making them or belittling them, but by reason, by dialogue. And that is the approach that should be taken. In conclusion, I would say that insofar as community affairs are concerned, the politics of the day should have a base that is governed by morality. We're not talking about intrigue. We're not talking about maneuvering to find a position of strength. And this should be protected with a strong will and an unswerving purpose. It must be approached with humility and prayer. As has been said, this is not necessarily Islamic, but I have read it somewhere, and I like the statement, so I have to put it across to you. History is the march of God in this world. Ours, then, is the task to see that the road tends ever towards justice and morality. We tend to get carried away at times in looking at better things, as I've said before. But the idea, in my opinion, or the emphasis, in my opinion, should always be in looking over the small things and giving greater importance to ways and means in which we can better ourselves, better our community, and take a major step forward. Assalamu alaikum.
Brother Nasir, thank you very much for the speech. It's amazing that nobody after a hard day like this and that long drive, went to sleep. So obviously that's a credit to his paper and what he said to us today. I've made a few minor observations that I'll share with you very quickly, and then perhaps we can open it up to what you think about it. And I'm not going to chew my words or be political with them as Nazir chose to be at some stages. The brother and Nazir Ghulam send bits out. Nazir is a friend. We talk about these things very often. There wasn't the normal guts that he expresses when we get into discussion.
And I think the fact that we are discussing whether Jamat as an Islamic institution should participate, we must, I think, substantiate our arguments with Islamic sources. I don't think it's an issue that just a group of laymen can sit down and start expressing their own personal opinions without any kind of documentation. And I don't think it's a simple and easy issue that can be resolved in one sitting by us. So I think to have a constructive outcome, we have to, I think, attempt to justify our arguments based on some sound sources for it to have any kind of weight and validity, I think, for the outsider. A question was posed a while ago that what are the benefits of involving ourselves in external politics if it doesn't benefit our own Jamaat? And I think this goes contrary to the very concept of an Islamic Ummah, that we cannot be myopic and short-sighted in believing that only if it serves our interests, then only we should pursue in that politics. The concept of an Ummah is that if it enhances and promotes the goals of the community as a whole, the Muslim Ummah, we should support that cause, even if it may even endanger our interests. Secondly, I think the role of politics is quite self-evident. I think, as Brother Nazir has pointed out, that we are talking about constructive, wholesome politics, Islamic politics. And I think the major benefit we can accrue out of this is that many of the youths who are living here are alienated. When we try to present Islam in a dual fashion, we have two standards. We have to, I think, make an effort to integrate Islam as a total way of life, and this can only be achieved by, I think, involving politics in our day-to-day life, even addressing politics from the podium, I think, from the pulpit. Because only this way we can bring about awareness of what is going on in the Islamic world. And I don't think it is fair for us to single out Iran, which has not been receptive to our request to join them. Because we have to recall they are under very extreme and acute pressure at the moment. And I don't think a country which is at war at the present time, which is suffering also internal sabotage by various elements, I don't think it is fair for us to pass a judgment sitting here far away and making a critique. Because I was there last year and they have enormous and colossal problems of their own before they can really start embracing us. I think that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mohammed,
politics, Jamaat, yes. If they want to get involved in from municipal, provincial, or federal, that's fine. But as being a Shia, we should get involved in Iran or Iraq politics. As Ahmad Balu put it, we should, yes. As Ahmad Balu put it, it should not only be a lip service, it should be properly done. We may encounter lots of problems, but that's fine. Being a Shia, you expect that. So I should say, yes, we should participate.
And the backlash that we might see, say, Quranic?
I was wondering what you would hope to achieve by entering politics, by training young people to enter the greater politics, the local, provincial, or federal politics. What would you gain by that? I mean, if Brother Bashir Versi got a seat somewhere or became a minister somehow, I don't see how that would...
The subject which I'm going to address this morning, the strength and weakness of our office bearers on the executive committee, should they be given more powers, or should present powers be curtailed, how effective they are or can be. I am combining all this in one paper, and then as many questions come along, I will attempt to answer them. I would like to start this paper with a quote from the Holy Quran, which is on chapter 18, the cave, ayat number 10. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا مِن لَدُنْكَ رَحْمَةً وَحَيِّ لَنَا مِنْ أَمْرِنَا رَشَدًا. When the youths sought refuge in the cave, they said, Our Lord, grant us mercy from Thee and provide us a right course in our affair. When people emigrate to other countries, it is but natural to endeavor to practice and preserve their religious, social and cultural patterns of life. We have done our best, and the credit goes to our various voluntary workers and executive committees for having united our community in many ways towards our cherished goals. In many places where we had been living, including North America, initially we did not have a common place of worship and center for various social, educational and cultural activities. With our faith in Allah, we now have our religious institutions in many countries of North America. This not only gives us the sense of pride and appreciation, but also hope that by investing our precious time and efforts in our religious curriculum, our children, which is our sacred trust, will survive the future as educated and devoted Muslims. In trying to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of our various office bearers, let me make it clear at the outset that this paper in no way attempts to criticize any particular person or group, but rather to get an awareness of the views expressed by the writer, which will then form a basis of our discussion. Leadership resources. Let us now attempt to examine the leadership itself, which will include a sincere assessment of the strengths and weaknesses of our leaders. The characteristics of effective and successful Jamat is strong leadership, which generates power and momentum to advance the community forward. The power is neither dictatorial nor authoritarian, but foresightedness to advance and lead the community in its aspirations, and to be able and noble citizens, as well as obedient and humble followers of our faith. Leaders are those who effectively lead the community toward thoughtful accomplishments and achievements of substantial objectives. This means that the leaders of our Jamaat should be active as well as responsive by sharing their own sense of direction and vision, and at the same time enabling others to share theirs. An evaluation of the extent to which the Jamaat has strong leadership resources must focus on the quality of objective toward which the leaders are working. What types of leaders should we have? In selecting or electing our leaders, the prime focus should be on competency, then compassion, and then commitment. It is more important to focus on who will be competent, who is really compassionate, and who also has some degree of commitment. It is also necessary to observe what leadership skills the person will bring to the post, which will enable the leader to focus on major planning policy programs, financial objectives, and decisions that will shape the future of the Jamaats. I would like now to give a couple of quotes from the Holy Quran again, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala insists that the leaders whom He has sent to rule on the earth has given them knowledge as well as wisdom. Chapter 2, the cow, Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 247. قال إن الله اصطفاه عليكم وزاده بسطة في العلم والجسم والله يؤتي ملكه من يشاء والله واسع عليم. He said, surely Allah has chosen Talut in preference to you, and He has increased him abundantly in knowledge and physique. And Allah grants His wisdom, His kingdom to whom He pleases, and Allah is ample giving, knowing. The stress is on knowledge and physique to carry out the work. In chapter 19, Surah Al-Maryam, sentence 12, Ya Yahya, أُزِلْتَ كِتَابَ الْقُوَّةِ وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحُكْمَ سَبِيًّا. O Yahya, take hold of the book with strength, and we granted him wisdom while yet a child. This, to my interpretation, even shows that if a youth has the knowledge, has the wisdom, he can lead us. In chapter 12, Surah Yusuf, ayat 22, وَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ آتَيْنَاهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. And when he had attained his maturity, we have given him wisdom and knowledge, and thus do we reward those who do good. As leaders share their substantial leadership and strengths on behalf of the members of the Jamat, the future becomes the present reality, and the present reality of accomplishments and achievements advances us towards the future. It is not simply the case that our young people are the leaders of our Jamat for tomorrow, but it is the case that the present has the power to shape what tomorrow looks like. At the same time, the Jamat that has discovered, developed, deployed its leadership resources has before it a future of continuity, hope, and accomplishment. Where our weaknesses lie. The most effective decision-making process is one that constitutes to the development of wise decisions and thoughtful directions for the Jamat. Generally, the decision-making process can be solid when most of the decisions reached reflect sound wisdom and thoughtful common sense. Also, the decision-making process can be said to be solid when decisions are focused on important priorities rather than on urgent trivialities. The four groups of decisions that are worth considering are: number one, matters that are both important and urgent; number two, matters that are important but not urgent; number three, matters are urgent but not important; and number four, matters that are neither important nor urgent. Many leaders live out their lives focusing on item 3 and 4 decisions rather than on number 1 and number 2 decisions they should be concerned with. At the same time, these leaders should focus their attention on the decisions that are needed as well as those that are wanted. In many cases, rash or inconclusive decisions are made by leaders in view of their lack of comprehension knowledge of the situation or incompetency or lack of foresight. Some leaders accept the responsibility without any regard or understanding of real meaning of the position they occupy. They do not understand the objectives and goals of the community, mainly because we have been brought up to believe and accept, even at this age, that the work of the Jamat is nothing but attendance at the mosque and madrasa. The officials on the executive committee have a variety of responsibilities for the members, but we do not undertake those objectives. We should, for instance, be making arrangements to promote marriages between our people, here, Africa, Europe, and the subcontinents, or other places. We do not give any attention to this main sphere of life, but only confine ourselves to arrange the marriage solemnizing ceremony. In giving the quote from the main khutbah, which we always hear when we attend these marriage ceremonies, the priest who solemnizes the marriage, he starts with a khutbah, which is not the nikah itself, but it's made part of the nikah as a khutbah. It says, "An-nikahu sunnati faman raghiba, an sunnati falaysa minni." This is actually, I should have studied, Qala Rasulullah. Rasulullah has said, marriage is my sunnah. Whoever deviates from it is not from us. That is, he's not a Muslim. The inability of the members of the executive committee to discharge their responsibilities is a major setback in our growth and progress. While it is appreciated that people come forward to serve the Jamaat, it is imperative that they work rather than roam the seats they occupy. While this criticism may be from our side, for their part, they would expect us to give them support and rally with them. It is only with our encouragement and questioning that they can deliver and perform what they are required to do. When we have leaders by mischance or coincidence, the community as a whole suffers. An era of misunderstanding prevails in the community and we have nothing to achieve. We suffer with our families because nothing is achieved but rather loss of time and improper use of resources. The major weaknesses lie in having wrong leaders or incompetent leaders or leaders who do not aspire to do what they are required to do. Here, we should have a quote from Najib Balagha, which we always mention. It is letter number 62 from Imam Ali alayhi salam to Malik ibn Haris al-Ashtar. I've taken part of the text which reads, I am very anxious to reach the realm of God and I earnestly hope and pray for His blessings and favors. But it grieves me to see that this nation and country is being ruled by uneducated, unwise and vicious leaders. They group the wealth of the country and drive its people into slavery. They hate pious and good people and quarrel or fight with them. They gather heretics and sinners around them and are happy in such company. May God have mercy upon you. Come out to defend your country, your property, and your religion from the roads of your enemies. Do not be lazy, careless, and cowardly. Otherwise, your lot will be humiliation and disgrace. The community has able and capable people to take this community ahead. We have made great progress in many fields, but we have now stagnated and are only talking by suggesting and criticizing instead of acting. What is required now from us is action by full participation in all communal activities. If we have a weak leader, his weakness will be demonstrated by his weak approach to the objectives of the community. If we have a competent leader, he finds himself weak because he may not get the support from us or any encouragement. It is imperative that we support our leaders and not oppose them for the sake of enmity or hatred. Leaders of the Jamaats have the potential and capabilities to lead the Jamaats towards any goal they have, but the basic requirement is to set those goals. Once the leaders understand the objectives of the Jamaat and have the goals or target, there is no reason for reverse course. Resources utilization. Unfortunately, we do not have any communal sports, culture or other social activities. The idle time is then utilized or directed on trivial matters. The mind better utilized earns dividends, and it is in our own interest to deploy our time and efforts to our own advantage. I have derived great essence from the Chinese proverb that says, ordinary minds talk about people, simple minds talk about events, great minds talk about ideas. Many of us may be talking about people all the time. Even if we talk of ideas, of what and how to do things, or what should be done by the Jamaat, we would expect others to do, and we ought to be advisors or referees. At the same time, our advice also includes a pattern to undermine the authorities of our elected representatives. All these flaws become real setback in our communal development and bring about devastating results. Our 60 Imam has said, taqwa is very important in our daily life. He explained that a person transforms himself into 3 types of personalities, even in one day. One who talks about others, which is riba. One who talks about himself, boasting. And one who does zikrullah, remembrance of Allah, which results in inducing good thought to the society. When we go on criticizing our leaders just for the sake of time or any otherwise, the dedicated leaders break. They come out to support and work for the community, and instead of getting appreciation, which they do not ask for, they get insults and ridicule. When good and capable people withdraw from community services because lack of members' interest and support, wrong people then take the leadership because there is nobody to serve. Although this in no way can apply, but history has proved that we have failed to comprehend and appreciate the services of our brothers and sisters. We have a long way to go before we can appreciate and implement what is required of us. And I have given the course from the Quran, which I hope will suffice at this juncture. Our leaders can be effective if we support them, and I must say without any reservation that criticism is not a sign of no support. I may be supporting our leaders of the Jamat, but I will always disagree of wrong or irresponsible decisions made by them. The criticism should be leveled towards that particular course of action and not due to malice or as a result of hatred or past grievances. Our leaders will thus derive accomplishment and powers when we have given them our support at all times. Whether we have taken our leaders in faith or in confidence, it is but natural for them to have our support. There is no additional or veto powers envisaged, as a rightful leader may not need such powers, but an unstable leader may compound his own mistakes and end in disaster. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Brother Ahmad Balu. From this topic, it seems that Brother Ahmad Balu.
I don't want to go into big details about that, you see, because we are not the people to judge anyone, to see his background. All what we look at him for the present, you see, what he is at the present, you see, whether he is all right to lead the community or not. It's not for us to pass any judgments for what he has done in the past. I think the biggest stress has been put, you see, that the leader should earn the respect. People are not coming forward because they are not earning the respect. I fully agree that the leader has to earn the respect himself. Now here the question is, the leader is not coming forward because he's not getting the respect from the community. 70% or 75% or 80% of the people respect him, give him respect more than what he deserves perhaps sometimes. It happens that the remaining 20% give him the disrespect. The leaders, people are not coming forward, not because they are not getting respect, but because they are getting the disrespect. Now what do you do when he gets the disrespect? I think that will be covered in the next session when I'll be presenting my district. The second thing, you see, Mr. Motion, you see, emphasized that there should be support from the members for that position and for that particular president or particular committee. I fully agree that, well, people support the committee and people support the president. But at the same time, the supporters themselves, I mean, they don't raise any objections when the others, you see, criticize him or they don't support him. I think it is equally the responsibility of the members in as much to support the committee or the leader, you see, to take the objections against or to take the steps against those who don't support it. So thank you very much.
Okay, I'll just find on 1 minute.
Marriage, you put here, we should, Gujarati ma boલું છું, sorry મને English નથી આવતું.
Speak in French, Speak in French.
અચ્છા, આમાં તમે લખ્યા છો કે આપણે લોકો મેરેજ પ્રમોટ કરવું જોઈએ ઈસ્ટ આફ્રિકા, યુરોપ, તો મને લાગે છે આપણે જમાત કરી રહ્યો છે અત્યારે, અને મને નથી લાગતું કે આઈડિયાની અંદર કંઈક.
I'm very pleased to ask this question, but this question has been hurting arranged marriages. The question is to promote marriages. We really lack in that.
Don't worry whether you're emotional or not. Come out with your points, please, and let's make it an interesting session. Thank you. Brother Hussain Barwani.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Mr. Chairman, Coordinator, Tata Paryani, brothers, sisters, Assalamu alaikum. The topic given to me is indeed very delicate and sensitive, and I'm sure brothers here will realize that these are my very personal views, and I'm presenting them just we can derive, if at all, any benefit out of this. When this Chacha asked me to present a paper on this issue, I was a little bit reluctant, because I thought at one time the timing was not right, and being the president of the Jamat, perhaps, it might be misunderstood or misinterpreted that I am using this office and producing this paper just because I am there and from what I have gone through in past few days. But believe me that this is not the case, as this particular question was in my mind even about 30 years ago, when for the first time Marhum Ibrahim Bhai had visited me in Hoima. And the very first question I had asked him at that time, that how will you be able to lead the community where you have no powers to punish them in case if they go against you. Mr. Chairman, the topic here is, should our Jamats have the power to expel or take disciplinary action against those who act against the interest of the Jamaat and those who create friction or discord? And if so, what powers should the Jamaat have to implement such disciplinary action? In order to arrive to any conclusion, Mr. Chairman, I thought it was appropriate to examine the background of our Jamaats, including the present system of running of our affairs, and more so what impact and role this plays in the welfare and progress of our community at large. Unfortunately, I don't have much experience about the Jamaats in India or Pakistan or other continents of the world, but I'm a little bit familiar with the Jamaats in East Africa and in the continent of North America and in Europe, because since my very young age, in one way or other, I was involved into Jamaat work, and at times I have been even president in one of the Jamaats in Africa. You will agree with me that our ancestors migrated from India and went to different parts of East Africa and spread themselves in various places. Wherever they went, side by side, in establishing themselves, they also put forth their efforts in building imamwaras and mosques in order to maintain and further our religion, rituals, and traditions. Although many places had imamwaras, unfortunately, except for sizable places like Zanzibar, Dar es Salaam, Mombasa, and Kampala, smaller Jamats could not afford their own permanent alims. Instead, they relied on other Jamats' help, and bearing in mind the responsibility with great understanding and wisdom, they managed to run their Jamats without even specified bylaws or constitutions. In most cases, the unity prevailed. However, after establishment of East African Federation in 1946, attempts were made to regularize the affairs of individual Jamats and to enforce the constitution to a certain extent. The respect of the leaders of Jamat, both with or without constitution, and their influence played a big role. In a way, I would say that they acted like dictators rather than elected leaders in smooth running and accepting their leadership. But nonetheless, they were challenged and they were opposed. Many times, the opposition kept boiling, and when matters were brought to the surface, the leaders were insulted, humiliated, and abused. This caused many Jamats to break. From one Jamat, they were split into 2 or 3, or in many cases, they lived with the hidden friction with the Jamat, and the unity started to disappear slowly. All Jamats, I would say all of them, have been victim of this in one way or other. And it has always been, as we have been discussing all the times, a matter of grave concern as how to deal with this destructive force which has caused much serious damage. Naming one or two, one of the most evident forms of impairment is that, like what we have discussed before, many intellectuals and good leaders have refrained from coming forward and to take positions in the Jamats. And consequently, the progress over the decades has been at a standstill and possibly even regressing. Mr. Chairman, when I say that the progress has been standstill, I mean it might be argued that we have done a very good progress if our progress and our aim is only to maintain or to deliver 104 or 14 majlises in a year, just to have the facilities for marriage and the facilities for burial. If that is only our aim, then I don't have to say much on this. But I think, and I very seriously believe, that our goal must be much higher than what we are doing at the moment, in which we must see the tabligh beyond our community. We must also create the understanding to make ourselves good Muslims. Before coming to the conclusion of what penalty, if at all, should be given, I thought I better examine what privileges we are getting or what privileges are being derived by the individual members from our community.
In our community at large, such as the Federation in East Africa, the SIMCO in North America, the World Federation based in the UK. And perhaps there are more which I am not aware of. No one knows what their jurisdictions are. It is simply appalling to me that Toronto Jamat, for example, is affiliated at the same time to two federal bodies, the Simcoe and World Federation. It is like having the province of Ontario being affiliated to the federal government of Canada, which it is, and simultaneously being one of the confederated states of the United States of America, which it is not. What if there is a conflict of policies between the Simcoe and the World Federation? What position the Toronto Jamat would take? If the World Federation is a federal body encompassing all the Jamats of the world, meaning from Waco, Texas to Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and all Jamats in between, one wonders what is the role of the Simcoe, or for that matter, the East African Federation in all this mess. Organization without due process of thought and careful planning is worse than having no organization at all. It appears to me that personal ego has predominated over good and welfare of the community at large. The dethroned sultan who escapes death and is afloat on his small dhow, which eventually finds his way ashore on a tiny deserted island where, upon setting his foot, he proclaims it to be his empire. Similarly, many of our leaders from East Africa, being uprooted due to political evolution in that part of the world, found new home in Europe, Middle East, India, Pakistan, Canada, and the United States. It appears to me that when they reach there, like the dethroned sultan, they set about creating their own small empires. This ego massaging resulted into unhealthy rivalry for territorial domain must be shunned if we are to look at interest and well-being of our people at large. Reorganization. I would like to propose that we reorganize ourselves with a view to creating harmony, coherence, short and long-term planning for betterment of our people, better use of limited talented manpower. Such reorganization, if implemented, would create a climate of synergy which will tap abundance of various resources, financial, organizational, manpower, from various regions of the world where our people live for the spiritual as well as material welfare of our people. To start with, there shall be 1. Regional federated bodies. We already have such institutions in place, as for example the Simcoe in North America, the Federation in Africa. I have great problem in visualizing the status of the World Federation. If so, by its name it implies a global federated body. If so, its members shall not be individual Jamats, rather regional federated bodies. Whatever it may be, it shall transform to regional bodies, say the European Federation, and relinquish its ambitious title of world. Furthermore, there will be need to organize other regional bodies to cover major regions of the world where our people live, say Middle East, Aden, the Gulf states, Pakistan, India, Australia, and so on. Under these regional bodies fall all the individual Jamats of the region. These regional bodies are fully aware of the surrounding and the predominant culture under which their people live, and accordingly set up their priorities to safeguard the welfare and needs of their people through the individual Jamats within their jurisdictions. In fact, every regional body shall have a standard constitution which shall apply to all its Jamats. The Jamats shall have priority over short-term goals for its members, whilst the regional body shall have priority over long-term goals affecting the people within its jurisdiction. Matters such as education shall fall under regional body so as to ensure its benefits being passed equally to all corners of the region with greater efficiency. Jamats shall nominate their representatives to the regional body in the same manner it is done now. Jamats with larger membership nominate proportionately more representatives than Jamats with lesser membership. Global federated body. there shall be only one global federated body, a federation of all regional federated bodies, not the individual Jamats. Its objective, among others, shall be to coordinate needs of its people around the globe through its members, the regional bodies. It, through its members, shall measure the pulse of its community around the world and institute remedies through global perceptions of events. For example, there is an abundance of candidates for religious knowledge in one region, say Pakistan. However, they lack the financial wherewithal to further train these candidates in some Western universities so that they can be more effective, say in Canada, in their teaching approach when they qualify as one. In North America, for example, there is abundance of money, I think, but no inclination in their people to pursue such careers. The global body shall coordinate such situations. It will use abundance of manpower from one region and marry it with abundance of capital from another for the overall benefit of its people around the world. In order to ensure that all regions, large or small, have an equal say, despite their population being large or small, it shall have every region represented equally. This will eliminate the fear of regional monopoly. This is only a peripheral look at reorganization. For a detailed one, we will have to study all the constitutions which are presently in force, individual Jamats as well as the federated bodies, and come up with a fresh look to our organizations. Please refer to the enclosed chart of reorganization. The chart clearly tells you that there's only one body on top, and its members are the regional bodies, and there could be 10, 15 regional bodies, it doesn't really matter. And under the regional bodies are the Jamats. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alim. Before my brothers, I open the floor for questions. I would like to clarify certain points in this paper. By being the virtue of being the Secretary General of NASIMCO, I think it is plus for me to chair the session, I guess. Presently, we have three main bodies, federations, to say so. East African Federation in East Africa, World Federation, and North American Shia Islamic Muslim Community Organization. In short, NASIMCO. Now, Salim in his paper has posed a question. First about the membership. All the Canadian Jamats and American Jamats are the members of NASIMCO. NASIMCO is the member of World Federation. By Jamats being the member of NASIMCO and NASIMCO being the member of World Federation, all the Jamats are automatic members of World Federation. The dues is being paid by NASIMCO for all the Jamats. No individual Jamat is paying dues to World Federation. Now, there's another question here. In the event if there is a dispute between NASIMCO and World Federation, what kind of stand an individual Jamaat will take? A Jamaat being the member of NASIMCO, I guess it is his moral obligation that they will take the stand, whatever stand NASIMCO would take. NASIMCO caters the need. Before I go, I'm sorry, I'll take myself backward. Now, World Federation is considered of NASIMCO, East African Federation, plus Jamaats of countries where there is no federation, like Pakistan. So they are, I think Mehfil Murtaza is directly affiliated with World Federation. And same way Jamaats from other countries like Middle East and Europe, Now, Nasimco caters the needs regional-wise, such as the Jamat needing an Alim assistance, grant for building any Imamwara mosque, need for any books. Jamat takes care of the needs of their own members, and they are busy more or less running the operation, day-to-day operation of organizing majlises and so forth. And World Federation, I presume, takes care of the needs of all the Jamats worldwide. Like Nasimco is not a rich, doesn't have any big fund or income as such to finance big projects. I will have further observation after having some question from you. I would like now to open the floor to you for questions if there is any, if there are any. Brother Mohsin.
Brother Mr. Chetina, or Mr. Chairman, my understanding at the moment, having spoken to the World Federation very recently, the structure Brother Salim, Mr. Chetina has presented to us is in fact in existence right now. Excuse me. We have a situation right now with the World Federation, and it's just a matter of time that we will have exactly what Brother Salim has suggested intact, in existence. We have a situation right now, for instance, with the American and Canadian, we have the Nasimco, which will be representing this continent. We have the East African Federation, or African Federation as such. We have the Gujarat Federation. And then we have situations with individual Jamats who have not yet been federated to the local level, which are right now directly members of the World Federation. Once the World Federation has got them into the regional structure, like Nasimco and Gujarat Federation and so on, then the World Federation, or in this case the global body as Brother Sachidana calls it, will be only responsible, or the bodies that will be reporting to the world body, the global body, would be this regional, the Nasimco, the Gujarat Federation, the East African Federation, and so on. So we have, in fact, the structure in existence right now. It's just a matter of time when perhaps the World Federation gets itself tied in with the regional structures. So what I'm saying is we have this structure right now here in existence already. Just a matter of time in getting it into
there are some loopholes which has to be.
Another area that Brother Salim is pointing out is the structure where he is saying that we have our Toronto Jamat, for instance, reporting or responsible to Nasimco, and Nasimco then responsible to the World Federation, and analogy with Ontario to federal government and the Americans, and so on. It's really not going to be that way structured at all. If I understand right, we have for instance, the Toronto Jamat will be responsible to Nasimco, Nasimco responsible to the world body, and a little Jamat in Gujarat responsible to Gujarat Federation to the world body, and so on. So really, there is no such situation in existence, nor will there be any. Right now, are we saying that Toronto Jamat is responsible to Nasimco and the World Federation? We're really not. But isn't that what Brother Salim is pointing out to?
That is in his paper, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to clarify to you.
So that's not so, though.
Yeah, that is not so.
Thank you.
Shem?
My question is to Salim. Salim, when you wrote this paper, can you tell us what made you write this paper, and I mean, what was your thinking that, there must be some reason that you came to this conclusion. Is it because ineffectiveness of any particular body?
No.
And you're concerned about it?
No, my understanding has been that our Toronto Jamat is a member of the World Federation, that he pays his dues to the World Federation, is also a member of the SIMCO. That's my understanding. Now, also, on a situation such, if you remember, there was an Alim who came here, and we had a problem with that Alim. World Federation apparently had a problem with this Alim, who was quite abusive of the pulpit. If you remember, we had the president of Jamat circulating a letter to all of us. A telegram had come from World Federation to the Toronto Jamat. He did not go to the SIMCO.
No, it went to...
It was the SIMCO?
The SIMCO, yeah.
And the SIMCO then finally conveyed it.
We conveyed it to Jamat.
So Toronto is then, it's not directly affiliated to the World Federation. Then why is the World Federation having regional meetings whereby UK Jamat and all Jamat members could go in there?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, that the countries where there is no federations, like for example, there is no federation in England. It's a world federation, belongs to all of us. But there is no federation as...
There is no regional
European,
federation?
No.
No.
So individual Jamaat like Birmingham Jamaat or any other Middle East Jamaat are direct affiliated with the World Federation.
Should they not, rather than do that, is set up a regional federation in Europe and keep the World Federation one step removed away from it, and it only then deals with the regional bodies, regional federation bodies. I mean, you said there's no federation, there's no regional body in Pakistan, and they have one Karachi Jamaat as direct member. Well, they should encourage the regional bodies to be formed, rather than encourage individual Jamaat to join them. Then you have a global coverage of a situation, rather than one Jamaat speaking on behalf of Pakistan. There are 99 other Jamaats who know nothing about it and don't want to be concerned.
Nazir, I'm sorry.
I have a supplement on that because this is an explanation. So could I just ask a supplement question? In that case, this question would be to the chairman because you are a general secretary of the SIMCO. Does that mean that because an individual Jamaat becomes a member of the world body, the individual Jamaats of UK, and then there are lots of individual Jamaat, they have more say than the SIMCO as a group would have because they'll have more votes?
No.
I think I'll request Chacha to...
Because if you look at the Constitution, I just gave the copy to
I just got one today. They held it back from me.
You didn't ask for it. Nasimco, they will have more delegates than one Jamaat represented there. The Jamaat might come with 1 or 2 delegates. Nasimco can carry from here, if they have 13 Jamaats or 20 Jamaats, from each Jamaat there will be 1 or 2 delegates. And then on every 1,500 members, there is 1 extra delegate. So actually, the representation at the conference is not because there are more Jamaat there, so there will be more representation. And because Nasimco will be represented according to its membership. And not as one body.
If I remember right, the large population of Toronto, the way it is formed that our delegate or our representation, take Edmonton Jamaat or Calgary Jamaat, would, because of our large population, we would not really have an upper hand.
I was there because Devji was
That's right.
fighting for that.
Devji was fighting for that, okay? Now, if we have that, and we can take only so many delegates, is the world body also designed,
No.
does it have the same type of constitution?
No, it doesn't.
Then how...
In fact, when I was at the last conference, Africa has the highest representation with the federal body there, the regional body. That is how I won the election as a vice president. Because Africa had the highest representation.
Now it comes out.
Are you finished?
Yeah, please. Sorry.
Nazir?
Yeah, what I have to say may not necessarily be what I believe in, but I'm going to say it regardless because I want to change or throw a different angle to this. While I believe to a certain extent on the concept of a centralized body, I do believe at the same time that if you look at our Jamats worldwide, we're really at a stage where we cannot effectively operate under the global federated body concept that is being projected here. There are a number of reasons for that. I mean, if you look at it in the practical sense, there are definite problems that exist today between the World Federation, I say that in quotation marks, or the global federated body as it is being depicted here, and the individual Jamats, be it the Simco or be it the federation in East Africa or any of the individual Jamats. The three examples that I can think of quite readily is one, with all the problems that are being circulated with regard to the Gujarat one. With problems.
Gujarat Federation no longer exists.
No, I'm talking about the fund. I'm talking about the fund, about the monies that went. This has been brought up yesterday. The other problem that has come to light is the aspect of the Zainabiyya child sponsorship. The third problem that has arisen is something that has been referred to today already about an Alim, where there were certain problems that were experienced. The other thing that also comes to light here is that the problems that we are experiencing with the World Federation are no different than what we are experiencing with Nasimco. What Nasimco is experiencing, as far as I can see, is the problem of distances. It's the problem of having office bearers all in a particular city, because distances are so great it is not possible to have office bearers in different areas of the continent, the North American continent, for them to attend meetings. There is a definite gap, as I see it, between North America and World Federation. I do not see for a second that we are getting the sort of feedback that we would expect of a global federated body of which we were a part of. There is definite legitimacy to having a global federated body. At the same time, you can also find enough reasons to see if you can operate or organize something in a decentralized way. I would like to see, again I correct myself here, it's not necessarily that that's what I want to, but I just want to throw a different light here. The concept that I would like to see the World Federation or a globally federated body operate under would be only and only where there is liaison that is required, because, say for example, as an example has been given here about Alims, and fortunately, unfortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, most of the Alims come from the Indian subcontinent. Alims that are required in North America at the present time are requirements that we met from there. And yes, a globally federated body could be the liaison between the North American organization and the continent where the end product is coming from. But in terms of the fact still exists that North America being one of the major donors in a so-called globally federated body, our interest, I don't think, is represented at the present time. I would, and again, I cannot be part to this because it's just hearsay. I don't know if it is true with the East African Federation as well as to whether their interest is being represented. There are certain good things that are happening, like the medical fund. The concept of Zainabiyya child sponsorship is good, but obviously there are problems with it. There are certain things that have happened that I have noted, and I find something wrong with it. And I will say it, and I don't mean to hurt anybody in this, but I will say it regardless. The Vice President of the World Federation, and since he's here, he may answer. It's something that has bothered me for quite some time. I haven't had the opportunity of asking him point blank, but I have remarked a couple of times. The Vice President of World Federation sits in Toronto. Calgary Imamwara is being opened. The President of the World Federation flies from London, goes for the opening ceremony. while the Vice President, who's representing the World Federation, resides in Toronto on the North American continent. Whether he was asked or not, I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, what I would have liked to see is the Vice President should have been asked by the World Federation to go and represent the world body. This lack of importance given to our office bearers is something that I find unacceptable. But I do strongly feel that we are not strong enough at the basic core to operate in such a manner. If we were strong at the community level, and then at the regional level, then we would have something to go up and build a pyramid. And yes, it is important finally to have a body that will speak for the Shiite nationalities around the world. Thank you.
You see, the issue that was raised, that you just pointed out about the problems in Kutch.
No, I'm talking about the funds that went to the
Right.
I'm not talking about Kutch
Well, I'm referring here to the letter that was circulated by Fidaus and Ghulam Hussain.
I'm not even referring to that. I'm generally speaking about.
But I'm referring to that situation. And I tell myself, this would not have happened. This thing would not have happened if we had a federated body in India through which the monies would have been channeled officially. Okay? You see, when we all say just now, we just say Toronto is not a member of the World Federation. There is a copy of the letter written by the treasurer of the Jamat, Muhammad Ali Bhai, here, August 22nd. This is part of the circulation that I got in the mail from Fida Ghulam Hussain, addressed to the World Federation, stating to him, between March and May of this year, we have remitted to you sterling 21,448 pounds and US 11,372 pounds. Monies went directly from Toronto Jamat to World Federation. They were not channeled to Nasimco. Okay? See, these are the things. So doesn't matter where the structure is. The same thing answers your question. A Calgary Jamat at the opening would call the World Federation president out in the other corner of the world when the vice president of the federation representing this region was invited. Were you invited?
By Calgary Jamat, yes.
You were? So he was invited, but he could not make it.
No, but the World Federation, as I see it, should come to the vice president of the World Federation.
Yeah, and there are two issues. One,
I had a question concerning the same thing, regards to communication and lack of communication, which apparently was answered by Nazir at that program. But there is also another thing that comes up in a situation like this, when we read this topic with regards to the reorganization or restructuring of the world Jamats and the World Federation. If we were here, a point has been raised by Brother Salim here concerning the availability of funds and the availability of people who are willing to study. Let's say, for instance, if this Toronto Jamat was to come up with some kind of recommendations and suggestions, and since the Toronto Jamat is a member of the Nasimco, would it mean that any recommendations or suggestions would then be channeled through the Nasimco, and then it would then apparently go to the World Federation? If that thing happens, are we under any jurisdiction being given by the World Federation at this point in time to sit down and say that how we should be operating the World Federation?
you see, Nasimco amended constitution, all president of the Jamats are automatic counseled. Now, if there is any project, let us say Toronto Jamat comes up, right? And it's a humongous project which they cannot handle it by themselves. Goes through Nasimco, Nasimco will not have enough fund for it and will recommend World Federation for that project. it is recommended by Nasimco, World Federation will have no objection to assist as far as the fund is concerned, if need be.
No, but excuse me, Chairman, we here talking about what Brother Salim is saying here is the total restructuring of the World Federation, one body. In a situation like that, here is a separate body sitting in one corner of the world in North America who comes up with this idea that it should be monitored with one head there and all the regional and then the Jamats within. This is something that obviously funnels through the upper level to the lower level in the managerial level strata. Now I'm saying here it's a filtration from lower to the upper. The question arises, if we were to come up with some reorganization structure like this, would we be in a position to go to the World Federation and tell the World Federation that this is what we have come up with, and would the World Federation buy such a proposal?
Yeah, well, are you asking that we bypasses the regional body and goes directly to the world? Are you suggesting that? Go.
You see, what basically happens here is that you have individual Jamats, right? And any concern the individual members have to be local. It's by nature of how far can you see to the horizon, okay? So, on the grassroots level, your problems can be solved by your local Jamaat, all right? Now, let's take the step and go a tier up. And you are now going at the regional level. At the regional level, Nasimco, for example, is now representing, or is represented here by Toronto, Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver, Los Angeles, whatever. Then there are certain common regional problems that come about. Okay? What are they? Let's call it education. Education, I think, is a key right now for us. We are very much concerned about it. We are very much concerned about the quality of education and how it is transmitted from community to community. Do we have a standard for it? We don't have a standard. We are making an effort now to sort of consolidate everything today and to put it together. However, so that situation is a local, still a regional situation. So if Toronto, you as a Toronto member, you have a problem, you cannot have a problem which has global consequences. Because you really don't care about Mandali Bhai in Kach Mudra as to how his problems are. Because Kach Mudra Jamaat is looking after him. Right? So it is within that. So in other words, what I'm saying here is this. By division of power and concentration of certain situations and focus on all, you can deal with issues better, more efficiently, with greater return, so to speak. Okay? Then if you do, when Birmingham Jamaat goes directly to the Federation, World Federation, we go to the Simco, and everybody has different priorities, different situations. Now all the regions coming together, the regional bodies, are under the federated World Federation. They are now not looking at whether we should open the Sunday school from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock or 11 to 5 or every other alternate days, or whether they're not looking at those. What they're looking at now is this. There are Isnaisharis, Khojas residing, living in the Middle East, whose status is very temporary. They're very transient status. They have no citizenship. They have no landed immigration. One of these days, with the Gulf War, something is going to come. And these people will have to be uprooted. Do we prepare today for them to eventually come here? How do we do that? Nasimco, for example, would then work with both the United States government as well as the Canadian government to twist few arms in political field, to say, hey, we need to help. We need our people to move here, eventually. You know that the new immigration in Canada is on investment purposes. There's investment criteria. Am I right? If you have $200,000, you carry certain points. Are we helping our people out in Dubai who might have the $200,000? Are we helping them to come here? What is officially being channeled? Do we tell the World Federation that this is the fact here? Do the World Federation know about this? No, they don't know. Because there's no communication. You see, we now have to look at the global situation at the World Federation. Forget about the nitty-gritty. You see, point is that enough number of hours in a day, and enough days in a month. And if you are going to spend your time in mundane situations, rather than important situations, your time is spent, well, the same way, but the results will be quite different. It's only to take the division of power, put situation, put priorities in different places. So everybody can work in concert with each other.
Brother Hussain Baran.
Mr. Chairman, here we are in a situation where we have the paper prepared by Brother Salim. He has outlined what exactly he wishes to have, and it has been established that we have all what he wants in practice. Now there are one or two points maybe. He talked about other Jamats, you see. I think that the points have again been clarified, that these other Jamats are the members because they don't have their regional bodies there. I think one thing must be remembered, that attempts are being made by World Federation to establish or to encourage the local Jamats there to establish local federations in the different continents. The very example we can take is for India. They were successful in having Gujarat Federation established, which was one of the very difficult part to do. Unfortunately, for reasons given, this federation had to unfold. Now, coming back to your why certain funds are being channeled by Nasim or handled by by Toronto Jamat, the explanation has been given. And again, whatever transactions are taking place in consultation and in accordance with the close relationship with the Nasimco. I myself do not agree that having a world federation at this point in time is justified for all the continents in the world, for simple reason. Most of the countries are the victim of what we call exchange control. It's one-way traffic today. We can send money to East Africa, we can send money to India or Pakistan, whatever. But if our circumstances changed here, and if this continent was in need of money, having wealthier people in the other continent, it would be unfortunate that we will not be able to derive any benefit from there. And as such, I think that, well, there is no justification, as far as exchange, money-wise, money is involved, there should be federation for that purpose. There may be, we can have a sort of a liaison committee, whatever suggested by other brothers, which would take care of the mutual interest rather than the financial interest. Whether the World Federation is aware of immigration policy in Canada. I think I'm glad to say that in that particular field, our president of Nasimco, who is very, very keen, and you must have seen, in writing, when it comes to writing, he likes to write hundreds of letters. And the papers on immigration policy have been sent to the World Federation, so they are aware of that. On the other hand, It is not for us here to think of what will happen to Dubai people, and we should be ready for them. Had we had indication, or had we had this organization had the indication from Dubai, that well, in time to come, another 5 years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, we will need the assistance. Will you be ready, or what guidance would they give? You have to ask for the things to get. Well, and I'm sure when time comes, both the regional bodies, what we have at the moment, NASIMCO and World Federation, will give a hand. Only thing I would have liked in your paper, I don't know whether it did struck you or not, but this has been in my mind all the time. We have 3 regional bodies or 4 regional bodies. One says East African Federation, one says North American something, one says World Federation. I would have liked the uniformity in the names so that whereby we go, wherever we go, we are known and recognized by the same name. Or in my, suggestion, you see, not only these regional bodies should have the same name, but even local Jamaat should have the same name. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brother.
Mr. Brawley, you mentioned about this, we don't need a World Federation. Right? And I'm telling you, we have one. All I'm saying is, whatever it is, it's not good, and we change it. We have a World Federation. You cannot deny that we don't have a World Federation.
We have one.
Yes, right. No, if you don't need it, then I don't agree with you. But if you don't need it, then I think you should, as a president of Toronto Jamat, officially write to these people that we don't need it. Quite frankly.
I'm speaking my own mind. No. I'm not speaking the mind of the president. You see that I cannot take that sort of decision on my own without going to the Jamat.
What I'm saying here is this: we do have a World Federation. We do have it. It is not properly planned. It is not doing the job it's supposed to be doing. You said that NASIMCO has sent all the immigration papers to World Federation. Do we know the World Federation sent them to Dubai? Do we know about it? No, we don't know about it. I'll tell you something else. I came to this country in 1966. In 1968, I sent to Ishnashi Jamat in Dar es Salaam 10-page information about immigration in Canada. All right? At that time, it was an open policy in this country. People could walk in here with their bags and be let an immigrant tomorrow. Okay? That piece of paper was used by the members of the executive committee, passed to their closest friends, and the people of the community never knew about it until Uganda crisis in 1972. At which point, when you saw that piece of paper that I had sent, I had made a copy of it and sent to the Federation. So, to send an information somewhere is one thing. To make use of it is another.
Gentlemen, we are running out of time. Please bear with me. I will entertain 2 more questions. And I think I would, since I had given you already a chance, is Ahmad who has not contributed at all. So that would be the last question. No, after Raza.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers. Assalamu alaikum, brothers Salim. MashaAllah, I see you're not tired. You're even more powerful speaker. It's amazing how, you carry on. All I want to say is that we have this NASIMCO, and we hear that it's not registered and it's not charitable. Just recently, only a year ago, one organization, small organization in Toronto, they applied for registration and charitable, status, and they got it. How come such a big organization, NASIMCO, cannot register itself and become charitable? Why? What's behind it?
But it's big.
It's big, and it has big problems. So there are so many things involved. You see, and maybe even the time management. If time permits, Is that your only question?
That was my question. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Why not do that after?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, Mr. Chairman, we need the world body because it's only through the world body and through federation we can progress. United we stand, divided we fall. It's not recommended at this time to form any more federated bodies, regional federated bodies, because if the present structure are not well defined and functioning well, then everything will become to fragmentation. This lack of communication, or whatever we want to call it, is really harming us. The paper which Brother Salim produced about funds not being channeled to Kutch is really embarrassing. I'm surprised myself, not to condemn my own Jamat, that if the Toronto Jamat has channeled the money to the World Federation, having heard all these accusations, having written a letter, and no response from the World Federation, what has it done? I mean, we could even challenge the World Federation. If we don't get any reply within 4 weeks, or 1 week, whatever it is, we will have to think to another recourse. This is what the stand we should take. For example, I would like to clarify here, although we are members of the NASIMCO, we have been dealing directly with the World Federation until NASIMCO pulled on its socks, and last time we agreed that whenever we deal direct with NASIMCO, we would send all our copies. Whenever we deal direct with the World Federation, the Toronto Jamat will be sending its copies of letters, correspondence to NASIMCO. Now NASIMCO is in full capacity working, things are dealt to NASIMCO. But it's really unwise for the World Federation, having received all its money, and if it is not channeled as alleged, action has to be taken forward. Thank you.
No, actually what happened, no, you said that you wanted to say about... all right, I'll give you the chance. Go ahead.
I know, my reply has already been covered, by both, the President and Vice President of NASIMCO. But still I would like to mention here, even if, NASIMCO gets registered, as a charitable institution, they won't get the same status as Toronto Jamat has got. So we will still be, remitting our funds directly, to the World Federation. The arrangement which, Brother Ahmad just pointed out is that, whatever, we just communicate with the World Federation. NASIMCO is kept in the picture, by a copy of the letter. So is, Chacha, the Vice President of NASIMCO. Now, our Vice President of the World Federation. The other thing is, we do need, the World Federation, and we should be fully supporting it. If there is anything, which needs correction, there, we should point out to them. But there is a need, for the World Federation. So is the need of NASIMCO.
As regard to charitable statement, which is present, and that would be after question from...
Mr. Chairman, I didn't understand something that what you said is that NASIMCO gets charitable status. It still not be the same as us. I don't understand what you mean.
Yes, I'll tell you there. Toronto Jamat is registered as a charitable organization, certain years earlier, I think, about 8 or 10 years before, you see. There is less control over his funds, being transferred, overseas, you see. Then, the new organizations will be getting it. And that information I got, from the Revenue Canada. So the new charitable institutions won't have, the same status.
Yeah, that is something.
That is something that...
Yeah, I think, as I said, the more likely you don't on that matter. Yes, Ali.
Okay, this is a good system, but unfortunately it's restricted to Khoja, Shia, Shnashris. What about our relationships with Sunni brothers? I understand that the Toronto Jamat is affiliated with Canadian Council of Muslim Communities of Canada. How does our relationship with non-Shia brothers come about in this scheme? Like, what sort of relationship do we have with the CMCC?
The Shia brothers were not Khoja too?
Yeah.
As far as Toronto Jamat is concerned, I'm sure it is open. It's open to all Shia organizations. As well as NASIMCO is concerned, it is open.
Shia members in our organization.
Shia members. And are you asking what organization? It's all.
Okay, well, what about with Sunni brothers? Like, how does our relationship with Canadian Council of Muslim Communities with Canada come about through this system? Like, this system is restricted to Khoja Shia Ishnashris or just Shia Ishnashris. What about with our Sunni brothers?
I think, Mr. Chairman, you see the member with them, you see, they joined as a Muslim organization, and their constitution is open to all Muslims. The constitution of all our Jamats, including the World Federation, is only membership open to follower of the Shia Isnashri Jafri faith. What's the difference?
So it's not limited to Khoja only?
No, the word Khoja is a title in the World Federation, but the membership is open to all. So
I'll now give 2 minutes to Brother Bashir to give us some light on charitable status as far as Nasimco is concerned, since he's directly working with the Revenue Canada.
We've had difficulty in having Nasimco registered purely because there are 2 sovereign nations involved. We are dealing with the state of USA, United States of America, and you're dealing with another sovereign body, which is the government of Canada. Initially, the intention was that we could have one constitution which could be registered in 2 jurisdictions, in Canada and in the United States. That concept, unfortunately, was not a workable one, because each state obviously has its own tax legislations and its own requirements with respect to registration as charity. At the last conference, there was a committee struck up to look into these particular issues as to what to do in relation to registering Nasimco, whether we should be registering it in USA itself, or just in Canada, or bifurcate Nasimco, have a USA wing and a Canadian wing. Discussions are still going on. We've so far managed to get Revenue Canada to agree to have our American Jamats as members of Nasimco with registration to be with registration only in Canada, with Ottawa. However, there are certain requirements, and the requirements are that meetings be held only in Canada, that as far as the expenditure of funds are concerned, there are the usual limitations that apply to all other charitable organizations, so that if funds were to be remitted to places outside Canada, there has to be what they call the agency agreement, which has to be pre-approved by Revenue Canada. These matters are still being worked out at committee level with representatives of Jamats from the United States, and once we get their consent as to how we want to proceed, we will take that final step, because we've got agreement in principle from Revenue Canada that they are prepared to register us provided we meet their requirement. And the requirement is that the provisions of the Canadian tax laws are complied with, and their provisions are incorporated in our Constitution. That's where the problem is. If it was a simple Canadian organization, there would be no difficulty at all. We would have been registered here long ago. The difficulty has been because we are trying to cover a wider area, we are trying to deal with 2 sovereign bodies.
Just as a clarification of what Bashir is asking. Can we ask something on that, Bashir?
If it is all right with the organizer, we still have time, because it's nearly...
Is it possible to discuss this on an informal basis, perhaps? We seem to be running out of
the time for people.
There is still a very juicy topic.
Yeah. Can we leave it to
I have some concerns. Maybe we can bring this under other business, please?
If we have in mind. If the time permits. It will be only fair on my part if I give, and that is also I'm restricting to Salim for 1 minute, since he wants to say something.
Yeah, excuse me. I mean, I would like to at least sum up this topic. And in summation, I'm getting the feedback from all the people here. Most of them agree that there should be a world federation. World body should be there. Then I would like to sort of at least sum up with that manner that we have a World Federation. Membership of that World Federation be restricted to only regional bodies, and no individual Jamats at all, whether there is a regional body there or not, should be allowed to join this group, the World Federation. And what will that do is create an incentive for people within the region, if they want to be part of the program and overall good of everything, to get rid of their egos and settle down and form a regional body. And that will be a good start to what we're talking about. Thank you. 1 minute.
Thank you so much.
I don't believe that.
In this session, I had to hit him 3 times.
45 seconds.
Anyway, gentlemen, I think we had lots of feedback. We all have agreed that these organizations are needed on world level, regional level, and local level as it is, they are there. Now, in my experience as a secretary, you see, I agree with Brother Nazir here. We have petty problems. The concepts of everything is wonderful. But we have created the mechanism, we have created the body, but the working of it, we lack proper manpower to carry out the work. You see, this is our main problem. The other problem is at the same time, chain of commands. We always miss, we don't follow chain of command. We always try to, the Jamat try to bypass Nasimco and goes directly to World Federation, vice versa. It's not happening so much, but it is still, it is there. This has to be curtailed fully in order to make this organization more powerful and more effective. Lastly, in the next conference, I would be more than willing to suggest that all the names say for example, Canadian Jamat should be one name. Either Shia Isnashi Jamat of Toronto, Shia Isnashi Jamat of Kitchener, Shia Isnashi Jamat of London, Shia Isnashi Jamat of Hamilton, and so forth. Vice versa, same way in United States. You see, that way, we know that we have a united strength. Shia, whatever it is. Yeah. And unified. Why don't you come in between? You know. And a unified constitution.
Good, thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you for bearing with me. Once again, Jaja, thank you so much for giving me this time.
How do you answer this gentleman's question?
Salim, thank you very much for a very interesting paper. And Hussein, thank you for chairing the session. We're not doing too badly. If we take exactly 1 hour for dinner, we will be late by 1 hour in starting our next session, which is 9 o'clock, which is not too bad, considering that we took almost the entire afternoon off. So could we come back here for our final session at 9 o'clock? For our 5th and final session on the topic, what should be the extent of involvement of a resident alim in the affairs of the Jamaat? The principal speaker on this topic would be Salim Sasadina, and the chairman for this session is Shani Fazl. I call upon Shani Fazl to step forward and take the chair.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm the coordinator of this session and the seminar and the speaker and gentlemen. I've been put in a chair of a very, very meaty subject. It's not only going to be controversial, that I know it's going to be, but it's a subject that's been near and dear in many's heart. And let me first tell you a little bit about the speaker. Salim Hussein had said that he knew him from when he was in shorts. Salim knows me when I was in my diapers.
can't speak for him.
The day I came here, from the day I came here, it was thanks to his being here, and through him, I was fortunate enough to come into this country. But from the time I saw him involved in the Jamat, and I can relate to you things about 10 years ago, the first time I heard such a big controversy in the Jamat was when he read out a paper of a committee on the social aspects of our community. All hell broke loose. So he's quite used to any kind of controversies. Not only that, the irony of the situation is that more than 75% of their papers, recommendations are today in existence. And they all came in slowly. We were not even ready with the thoughts that he could project 10 years ago. We were that shallow. Another controversy was his first paper on the Alim, and he wrote that in Jamat's magazine called Al-Huda. Another hell broke loose. And if you remember that paper, he had the guts enough of calling a spade a spade. I've just read his paper now, and I think he's torn. Is it maturity? Is it mellow? Or is it the wonderful diplomacy that he has acquired over the years?
Probably the latter.
Well, without much ado, I'll ask Salim to now.
You have two papers there.
And something has been pointed out to me, and I think it's only fair. We have two papers on this subject. There was one paper by Sheikh Siraj Hassan, Dr. Siraj Hassan of Medina. And this paper, since he's not here, will be read by Brother Bashir Versi. So I'll call on Bashir Versi to read this paper. Just for a point of order, once we have read this paper, we are going to continue immediately with the paper of Salim, and we'll have a discussion thereafter. Brother Bashir.
Mr. Chairman, the only reason why this paper is taking precedence is because once Salim starts presenting his papers, I think there will be so much fireworks that it is only fair that those fireworks be directed straight at him. It would make things a lot more interesting. This paper that I'm about to read is a well-researched paper, but it's very brief and in point forms, and in relation to what is in store for us, I think relatively passive. However, you will be the judge. Dr. Siraj is a very pious person. He's chairman of the Board of Trustees at the Islamic Center of Medina and is doing tremendous work over there. Those of you who've had an opportunity of visiting Medina know exactly the extent and the scope of work that he is involved in. So without further ado, what should be the extent of the involvement of the resident Alim in the affairs of the community Jamat? Before discussing the above topic, we must define the necessary qualifications of the resident Alim for our communities in the USA and Canada. The resident Alim must have good knowledge of fiqh, Jafariya and Islam, must be a truthful and pious person, be able to deliver effective speeches, be able to communicate in English, must have fairly good knowledge of the working of the local community and its environment, must be energetic and should have a progressive mind, must be flexible and cooperative enough to follow the rules and regulations of the Jamat as long as these rules are within the broad limit of the Islamic Sharia and are in the interest of the local community. The involvement of the resident alim in the affairs of the Jamaat should be lead the daily prayers and guide in the religious education of the community and recite majlis and jashan of Khushali. To perform, assist in religious functions, i.e. nikah, ghusl, kafan and burial and other common religious rites. Do amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar. Encourage community members to do good, and if he sees anything un-Islamic being done in his presence, then nicely and politely he should give advice to correct the problem. The resident alim must not limit himself just to the ritual of the religion, but he must also work hard in building the Islamic character of the local community, and after due consultation with the executive of the Jamaat, he should also prepare the community to get involved in the politics, welfare of other Muslims living in different parts of the world. In Islam, politics and religion are not separate. It is one and the same thing as long as it is done with taqwa, for the interest of Islam and after due consideration of the local environment and the interest of the community. There always will be gray areas where there will be difference of opinion between the Jamaat officers and the resident alim. These differences must be resolved sincerely in the periodic joint conferences, meetings of the executive of the Jamaat and the resident alim. And before speaking out from the pulpit or any controversial political issue, on any controversial political issue, the strategy should be worked out behind the door in the joint meeting, presumably between the executive and the alim. If the differences between the resident alim and the executive cannot be resolved despite the honest and sincere efforts of both parties, then the resident alim should leave the Jamaat without causing division among its members and without discrediting its officers. One thing we must all remember, that technically the muttaqi resident alim is an employee of the Jamaat, but in reality he is serving Imam Zaman alayhi salam and serving the cause of Islam. Therefore, the Jamaat should not rule over him, rather work with him for the best interest of Islam and the community. Yours is Iman.
Assalamu alaikum. People often ask what role an alim should play. One hears this question being asked over and over again. And unfortunately, one has no definite answer. It is not an easy question to tackle. It is a subjective issue, and depending upon personal traits of the people to whom such question is posed, one would get various different answers. If one is very religious-minded, one would answer that the alim's role should be that of an authoritarian, that no steps should be taken by the community without alim's consent. Such a person would further assert that an alim shall attend all executive meetings and shall have a veto power on all decisions of the executive committee. If, on the other hand, such a question were to be posed to, say, a non-religious liberal member of our community, one's answer might be that the community doesn't need an alim in the first place, and therefore it ought not to consider the question of the role of an alim when it should dispense with his services altogether. The above are examples of two extreme positions, and depending upon whom one asks the question, one might get a response which one could position anywhere on the spectrum between these two extremes. A further reflection on this issue is it and proper to ask such a question? A question dealing to identify an alim's role. The word alim means a possessor of knowledge, and in religious context, knowledge has to mean religious knowledge. But Islam is an all-encompassing religion. Not only does it deal with the basic issue of deity, but it goes further and deals with the whole aspect of life. It is a sad irony that the modern Muslim doesn't believe
in all-encompassing latitude of Islam. He has embraced the misconception of Western ideal by distinguishing what knowledge is religious and what is secular. The early Muslim, on the other hand, approached knowledge in true sense as taught by the greatest teacher of all time, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and our Imams, may God be pleased with them, and extend his pursuit to its outermost limit. Hence, his contribution to philosophy, mathematics, physics, chemistry, alchemy, astronomy, architecture, and so on. If we modern Muslims believed as ardently as the early Muslims in the saying of our Prophet ﷺ, that in pursuit of knowledge, he didn't distinguish between religious and secular knowledge because he saw no difference between them, if one has to travel to China, the farthest frontier of that day, one should undertake it. We today would be in the forefront of space exploration, the farthest frontier of our time, to acquire knowledge. The Jamat is an organization whose aims and objectives clearly state that it shall conduct itself in accordance with the Sharia. Now, among us, if there is a person who is most learned in matters of Sharia, please bear in mind that Islam being an all-encompassing religion, it means in all aspects of the organization's activities, it becomes incumbent upon him to make an issue with the Jamat, the executive committee. Should he feel that a particular decision or action by the Jamat is in contravention of his aims and objectives. When he does so, do we take it that he is meddling in the affairs of Jamat? Perhaps the sore point is not that the Alim ought not to point out to Jamat its contravention of his aims or objectives, should that be the case. Rather, the manner in which it is done. Perhaps he ought not to use majlis to raise issues with Jamat. If so, what other avenue is open to him? The Alim is not a member of Jamat, and therefore the right to be heard normally accorded to an ordinary member is not available to him. He might request a meeting with the executive committee and would have to depend on fairness and decency of the executive to consent to such a meeting. Alims are not the only ones susceptible to abuse of power. Even if the executive is fair and generous enough to spend his valuable time to hear him out, it is not bound to take any remedial steps. This scenario does not apply to flagrant abuse of Sharia, wherein the executive might have to deal with the whole community, rather to subtle abuses of it. The problem, however, as past would suggest, issues of conflict between Jamaat and Alims are not limited to Sharia. Here are some of the conflicting issues which I have been aware of in the last few years. A. Employment. B. Abuse of pulpit. C. Promoting dissension in community. Let us now examine these issues. A. Employment. In an issue of employment, it would appear to be very uncomplicated. The relation between Jamaat and Alim is that of an employer and employee. In view of the terminal nature of the relationship, there is a contract. Also, perhaps needed for validity for immigration purposes. Of course, contract has to include duration of employment, grounds for termination of it, service employer expects employee to perform, and compensation employee would receive for his services. There should also be a provision for extension of his term. Now, there isn't much that can go wrong in such a relationship if both parties fulfill their obligations under contract. But the fact is that a lot goes wrong in such a relationship during the course of the term of contract, particularly at the time to either renew or terminate it. The Jamaat is put in a bind, particularly if the Alim has had a borderline performance, meaning some members consider him a great contributor to their spiritual welfare, and some consider him to be mediocre. Damned if it extends the contract, and damned if it doesn't. The situation may be further aggravated if the Alim decides to play a bit of politics by appealing to sympathetic members of the Jamaat. either from over the pulpit or at private meetings. Despite employment contract, written or oral, and despite the legality of it, the most important question is the Alim an employee of the Jamaat? Of course, he provides a service and he receives a compensation for it. Legally, such an arrangement is defined as employment. But we have to consider this not by the letter of the law, rather more importantly, by the spirit of it. In philosophy, it is widely accepted that one can never be able to pay enough to a teacher who provides knowledge to his students. Of course, we do pay a teacher's salary for them to sustain themselves and their families, but never their true worth, which philosophers claim is the measure. To claim that an Alim is an employee of Jamaat is to take a very simplistic view of the relationship. If it is true, Jamaat would be giving an Alim, its employee, the topic on which to speak and what to speak. To put it differently, students dictating to the teacher on what and how much they want to learn. An educational institution, Majlis, would fail miserably in its mandate to teach if it would let students prepare and institute a curriculum. Furthermore, Alim, any Alim, enjoys a special reverend status with most of the members of Jamaat. Most of them are descendants of our Prophet ﷺ, and this fact bears heavily on how they are perceived by the members of the Jamaat. We also have to deal with unpleasant historical precedent when Alims were dictated to and abused by tyrannical Muslim rulers of the past, Muawiyah, Yazid, etc., and perhaps the present, on what to say and what not to from the pulpit. Last, and not the least, although Alims have never claimed to be infallible, they are treated like ones. Therefore, despite employment contract, they are never perceived as employees, nor should they be. Any executive thinking otherwise is greatly mistaken. B. Abuse of pulpit. Frankly, I have found in Toronto more personal vendetta carried out by lesser people from the pulpit than Alims. I have heard Alims hinting at them occasionally, but have never seen them flagrantly abusing the pulpit. On the other hand, the dosage of personal vendetta from pulpit I have heard for one member of a community will, I'm sure, be more than